Hey everybody, and here's another U.S. History Flipped with me and Miss Clemens. I'm going to be doing this one, and so yeah, this one is all about the progressives. So we're going to be going through a big, huge chart. You're going to see it here in a sec, and you're going to be writing down all of this. There's going to be pictures popping up every once in a while, and some multiple choice questions, which you're going to write the answers down on your sheet. Remember, you can always pause it whenever you need to write stuff down, or go back and forth to get information for the multiple choice questions, whatever it is that you guys need. So here we go to start. We have the ICC, the Interstate Commerce Commission. Now, these guys were created mainly because they wanted to stop the improper trade that was going on. There was a whole lot of weird things, especially with the railroads, where they were really just taking advantage of people. The railroad would roll up to some guy and start charging 10 times the rates that they said they were going to, and it was just really unfair. They also made sure that they set up the specific width of the railroad cars so that everything was the same, because it just made everything work better. You also have the Sherman Antitrust Act, which outlawed monopolies, giving the government more power to break up the monopolies. It was not successful. Remember, a monopoly and a trust are the exact same thing. It's just a different word for the same thing, and it was not successful. And then there's the Northern Securities versus U.S., and that little V right there makes it a Supreme Court case, which declared the Northern Securities a monopoly and set a precedent for the government to be able to control those things and for the government to be able to break them apart. So right here, that's the seal that the ICC uses, and they would regulate a whole lot of trains. And right there we got a train in freezing cold weather, just like it is now. Right? Northern Securities versus U.S. was a ruling that the federal government could regulate the companies, and it proved that they were able to. Eventually, you're going to see a whole lot more of that stuff as it goes on. And this was a political cartoon from the time about the Sherman Antitrust Act. Them going in trying to bust up all these big guys. They weren't able to, but they're trying. You can't blame them, and they're going to be successful later on. Right? So right here, you're going to answer this question. And then next we have the Hepburn Act. Railroads must get the ICC's permission to raise rates because they were taking so much advantage of people. It got really, really bad for a while. And the Pure Food and Drug Act outlawed sale of impure food, mislabeling of drugs in food, and increased control over food and medication. This was going on because those little labels on our food that say, what's in it didn't exist back then. And they were putting all sorts of stuff in our food. It was actually really disgusting. And they were also making these wild claims, which I'll get into in a sec. So right here you have railroad rate regulation, and the president is just trying to tell all these guys with the Hepburn Act, you cannot just raise rates randomly. It has to be regulated. And then this is just some of those different things that they were doing that was just crazy. Blindness prevented and cured. They couldn't cure blindness back then. You can't say that. That's a lie. But they were still trying to. It was crazy. There was also these quacks just selling these miracle liquids, and they could be putting anything in them. It could be just alcohol. Like your pain goes away just because you get drunk. They could be peeing in it. It didn't work, and they were saying it was, and just flat out lying to people. So the Pure Food and Drug Act put a stop to that. You just can't do that anymore. And thank God they did, because I like it when my medication works, because that's helpful. Next we have the Meat Inspection Act, and this is another awesome one. It required inspection of meat processing because the food facilities were unhealthy and flat out disgusting. We're talking rat feces and poison all over the meat, fingernails. You never knew what was going to be in your burger. It was awful. Thank God they fixed it. And Mueller versus Oregon, another V, Supreme Court case, limited the working day, but only for the ladies. Didn't do anything for the guys yet. Right? But it showed that working hours could be limited. That was the big thing. It's as soon as they start doing it, they get that power, they prove they have that power, they can do more later on. So right here we have some people slaughtering some meat in really, really disgusting facilities. There's rust and dripping water and all this stuff just coming down. These guys aren't wearing gloves. They're just breathing and coughing and sneezing all over the food you're going to be eating. It's nasty. And then This is Mueller versus Oregon. We have rows and rows and rows of women working in these factories 10, 12, 13, 14 hours a day. You couldn't do that anymore. Like, you can't treat people. I mean, we're not slave labor. You can't treat people that way. All right, here's another question for you guys to answer on your sheet. Now we get the Federal Reserve, the bank. All right, government controls the money in circulation and the interest rates. Whenever the economy is doing really, really well, they're going to raise the interest rates. Try and keep everything nice and even. They control the amount of money that goes out. They're the ones that print the dollar bills that we have in our pockets. And then the Department of Labor, created to protect the working people, because we really do need it. Like, the businesses are going to do whatever they can to make money. Somebody needs to be regulating it. Thank God they did. So if you take a look at your dollar bills, it actually says Federal Reserve Note on it, because they're the ones that are making the money. They're the ones that are setting the interest rates on your credit cards, on your loans. Now, they don't set the overall rate, the final rate. They just influence it, right? Like, if you have a American Express credit card, the federal government doesn't say it's 14 or 20% or whatever it is, but they can influence it by raising and lowering the rate depending on the type of credit card or loan or whatever it is that you have. Right? This is the Department of Labor, just a couple of the different things that they do, making sure that people follow labor laws, making sure that workers' insurance is going on, construction codes for safety, disability services, workers' compensation, like if you get hurt. That's them. That's the Department of Labor. It's a good thing that they do it. Next, we have some amendments. The 16th Amendment. Congress has the power to tax income. So they had the power to tax before, now they get the power to tax income. Right? And they really did it because government needed more money, and they just need more money. It's pretty flat out. But when they did that, they made it so it was a graduated income tax. So that if you're poor, you pay less money. If you're rich, you pay more. Right? That way, if you make 15 grand a year, you get all your money back in your taxes. If you make 5 million a year, you're paying a lot, right? And it fluctuates in between. If you make 50 grand a year, you probably pay 15 grand. If you make 100 grand a year, you're probably paying like 30 grand. So, and there's a sliding scale and a very complicated tax formula that I don't understand. I don't know if anybody does. And then you have the 17th Amendment, the direct election of senators, which is more democracy. Remember, before this amendment, and the Regents loves this, before this amendment, the state legislators elected senators. We didn't. After this amendment, times changed, we get more power, we get more democracy, and we elect the senators. That's a big shift. So right here with the 16th Amendment, this is a newspaper article from back in the day. The government now has the power to tax income, and when they tax it, they make sure that if you have more gold, if you have more monies, then you pay more to the government. If you have less gold, if you have less monies, you pay less. Pretty straightforward. And then the direct election of senators. Right here, this is a picture of the Federal Senate over Washington, D.C. And this is back in the day, right? The people would elect the state legislators, and they could elect the House, but there's nothing here for the Senate. Now, eventually, this changes. They no longer elect them. Now we do. Right? That's a big, big change. And the Regents loves to ask questions about it. If you guys can answer this question, please. Thank you very much. Now we have the direct primary. Allows voters more power in selecting candidates, which is more democracy. We get more power, which is awesome. That's what we like. Power to the people. Right? When they're trying to determine who's going to run for the Senate seat, who's going to run for the president, who's going to run for whatever, we choose those candidates. Now, you have to be a registered Republican to choose the Republican candidate, which wouldn't make any sense for the Democrats to choose the one that they're running against. But you are able to influence which people run, which is awesome. And then initiative allows voters to propose laws, which is, again, more democracy, more power. If we think that there should be a cell phone law so that people can't drive on their cell phones, then we can write it up and we can submit it, and it can become a law. That's actually how the cell phone law got made, because I think it was somebody's family member got into a car accident because this happened. So they wrote up a law saying you shouldn't be able to drive while talking on a cell phone, and it passed. That's why that exists, and it saves people's lives. It's a great thing. Right? So now the people can vote for who's going to be running, more influence in the political process. And then here we have some people, some regular Joes, proposing some legislation, proposing some laws, initiative. Now we also have these two. The Regents loves to group initiative, referendum, and reform together because they're all things that increase democracy. With a referendum, the voters decide if legislation is passed. So in California, when they were voting on gay marriage, or Colorado, when they were voting on the legalization of marijuana, they put that out as a referendum. So everybody got to decide. You either vote yes or you vote no. And then that's just the way it goes. And that's how those laws either get created or shot down. And then recall, method to remove elected officials from office. Because we all love democracy, and if somebody ain't doing their job right, we should be able to recall them. And this happens mostly with governors. You sometimes see it with other people, and not every state has it. But it's a big deal. So right here, we have the people deciding in referendums, either yes or no, whichever way they choose. And this is some people campaigning, or they want Walker removed from office. He was a Wisconsin governor. He was not removed, if I remember correctly. If you guys can please answer this question, thank you very much. Now we have another antitrust act. First we had the Sherman, now we have the Clayton. The Clayton Antitrust Act, same exact thing. Restricting monopolies, increasing competition, allowing government to regulate those businesses. Right? This one was more successful than the Sherman, but still wasn't able to do everything. It takes a lot of time for the government to be able to build up the strength that it needs to be able to take down these really big companies. And the National Park Service. Government took over administration of parks, allowed more protection and control over parks, which is awesome because, Yosemite National Park is a beautiful place. We don't want it to be a parking lot. We want to go and see the deer and the butterflies and trees and stuff because it's pretty for people that can see color, I suppose. And right here, don't worry, it's pretty to me too. Right here we have another guy who has an antitrust laws axe, and he's trying to bust down these trusts with whatever he can. Now that's a pretty big job right there. I don't know how well he's going to do, but it took him a while to be able to take down the trusts. And then the National Park Service. This is their little emblem. And this is one of the park rangers with a really, really big snake, which is kind of scary, but also really cool. I personally would not be grabbing that snake because it's huge. Next we have the 18th and the 19th Amendments. Now the 18th Amendment was prohibition. No more sale of alcohol, no more production of alcohol, no more nothing. Right? They saw alcohol as creating a lot of problems in society. It needs to be busted up. We need to get rid of it. So that's what they did there. And then the 19th Amendment, women's suffrage, was the right to vote. It is not suffering. Suffrage is the right to vote. Women are entitled to equal rights as citizens, and they got the right to vote. So 18th Amendment, no more beer, no more liquor, no more nothing. And the 19th, women are now allowed to vote. Now they are now allowed to influence the political process, which is great. If you can answer this question, please. And that's it. So I hope you guys learned a lot. I hope you're going through all these videos. Have a good one.